Oh, are you ready? Let Brad speak. Ripple Swell 2025 final keynote doesn't get any better than this. I haven't watched it. Let's go ahead and enjoy. Get bullish. This is a good one, guys. Drop a like. Get everybody in the house so they know. Some of you know, but I want everybody on the same page, right? Right now, the prices, whatever. We want to make sure that we accumulate before the next rampage of rally. And this is why I'm bullish. Let's go ahead and enjoy 30 minutes or so. Sit down, relax, enjoy. And I think this is going to be very, very nice for many people that need to get bullish.
This morning I was in your seat.
Oh my gosh.
I was interviewing.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, staying through the day and staying through the event, really.
Finishing strong.
Finishing strong. Brad Garlinghouse here, of course, CEO of Ripple. And given that it's the day after Election Day, there's a lot to reflect on here because I think about how the 2024 election was such a game changer for the crypto industry. Breathed new life. It gave the industry a new lease on life, right?
For sure.
And Mike Novogratz was telling me on Bloomberg Television that the money from the industry swayed the outcome in 2024. I mean, it made a difference, and look at what's happened since. You've got a pro-crypto White House with skin in the game, a pro-crypto SEC. You have the Genius Act, which was passed on a bipartisan basis, and we know none of that happens on a regular basis here. So I'm curious, just to kind of start us off here, how pleased are you with the return on investment of the industry's political spending?
For those of you here this morning, I just remind you, I was in that seat, the interviewer. It's a whole lot easier to be the interviewer than the interviewee.
It is.
But look, I agree with what Novogratz said. I actually, during the 2024 election cycle, I tweeted out something to the effect that the Dems were going to be led off a cliff by Elizabeth Warren and Gary Gensler. And I think the Dems underestimated how passionate and how large the crypto community was, and I think it did impact votes. So when I don't think about it in the words of a return on investment. I think about it as we as a electorate should care about the United States leadership in innovative technologies, in AI, in the early days of the internet, and certainly that's true in blockchain and crypto. And the fact that it became partisan, I will be mind-boggled this on my deathbed. Like, this is a technology that can help people and be used to improve financial empowerment. We heard some great panelists today talking about this and why we would be opposed to a technology. Now, people can use technology in ways we may not like, but we should regulate that, not the technology itself. And I think that the community of the industry leaned in. Ripple was one of the key leaders, alongside Andreessen Horowitz and Coinbase, to support a super PAC that elevated and educated voters about these issues, and it certainly impacted some elections.
And of course, the SEC's years-long campaign against Ripple basically went up in smoke following the election. You talked about Gary Gensler just now. You've described the SEC under Gary Gensler as waging a war against the crypto industry.
But that's it's Elizabeth Warren's words, and I mean, literally, I'm not making those words up. They said, we're raising an army to attack crypto.
So what would you say to Gary Gensler if you were to bump into him on the street or downstairs?
You're fired.
I think actions speak louder than words.
So you wouldn't need to say anything?
Honestly, my honest view on this is I would not say, look, this is someone who I feel acted in bad faith. There wasn't an honest effort to engage and discuss. And I mean, you got to remember, this was when they sued us. I think many people would say, okay, you could see that maybe there's confusion about what is a currency versus a commodity versus a security. But one of the things they did that I find to be unethical is they sued me personally. And the way the law works is for me to have violated the law, I had to know what I was doing. Because for a personal charge, there's a corporate charge, and Stu Alderodi's sitting here nodding, so I'm getting something right. I feel like I learned a lot during that process. But the idea that I knew XRP was a security and acted recklessly anyway, it's just that's absurd. And they were just doing it to be bullies. And you have later on, you have even former chairs of the SEC going on TV saying that they intentionally waged pressure by going after executives. I just don't feel like that's the way the United States government should work.
So now
So if I
that
saw him on the street, I wouldn't say much. I'd say, hey.
Tell me in the comments what you will tell Gensler.
and you turn around and glare at him. What does the removal of this psychological, legal, and financial burden mean for Ripple, the company? Are there any constraints, do you feel like now, on what you're able to do, on your vision, on your strategy, on your path forward?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'll start with the thought. I don't think your question's about Ripple, but I think it's about the industry as a starting point. And I think we always, during the, when they first sued us, we said, like, this is an attack not just on Ripple, but on the industry. And at the beginning, people were skeptical of that. And I think most of the industry came around to understand that that was kind of one of the first attacks on the industry that, was the first of many. And so I do think that victory, which was long and hard fought, had a huge impact on unlocking the industry's ability to kind of move forward and play offense. Now, I do think, and as we've heard from various speakers today, there has been this massive sea change, and you're seeing institutions in this room who weren't here in years past, because now you have the US government taking a friendly view of this. But some of them still won't lean all the way in unless we have it codified with law. And the Clarity Act passed the House, not yet the Senate. As we talked about this morning with Patrick Witt from the White House, he believes, and we hope that we get something past the Senate before the end of the year. But I think for the largest financial institutions to lean in kind of permanently, we need that final step.
Okay, so I mean, and we'll see when Congress actually gets back to work whether they can get that done. As for the company itself and what's at stake, it's allowed you to move forward with your strategy, and right now that's very much M&A. You've been on a buying spree, 4 purchases this year. Yesterday you announced the acquisition of Palisade, a wallet and custody firm founded by some ex-Ripplers.
Welcome home, if they're here.
Before that it was G Treasury for $1 billion, and then before that Rail for $200 million, and there was also the prime brokerage Hidden Road, which is now Ripple Prime. Walk us through the larger strategy. What's the unifying thesis here?
So Ripple aspires, and I think we are clearly in the lead, to be the blockchain infrastructure company, period, for the enterprise, for financial institutions. We started with payments, cross-border payments particularly, and that's still core to our strategy, driving the velocity, driving the liquidity, driving the utility of XRP.
Let's go
into custody, and that was an acquisition we made 2.5 years ago, a company based in Switzerland that really it continues to be the leading custody infrastructure for tier 1 banks, HSBC, BBVA, SocGen. We will continue to invest in that, and the announcement yesterday of a company called Palisade gives us more capabilities in that space to go beyond just kind of that tier 1 bank customer set. But we truly believe in one of the assets that I'm most excited about. We just announced G Treasury. Renat, the CEO, I believe, is here. He an outstanding entrepreneur. These guys are the dashboard for the CFOs of over 1,000 companies, and they see trillions of dollars of payments. They're that orchestration layer enabling that. They see hundreds of billions of dollars of deposits that are dormant and could be perhaps more useful if in a tokenized form like, let's say RLUSD. So, we have, I think, unlike other crypto companies, leaned into buying what I would call traditional finance assets. Hidden Road, the vast majority of their business is not digital. Certainly G Treasury, that's true. And we think that is bringing the bridge between traditional finance and kind of, we call it decentralized finance. So we're very excited about how those pieces fit together. I do think we'll probably slow down the acquisition binge in 2026, which makes our corp dev team very happy.
But that still leaves you with 2 months, so I guess.
You hear that? Where's Eric? We still got 2 months.
Do you have any ambitions to own a crypto exchange?
Ooh.
We looked at that a long time ago, and we are very happy investors in a number of different crypto exchanges. We invested at a time when there was reticence to invest. We involved with Bitstamp and Bitso and PDAX. I forget others, but that's a very different business than the one Ripple's in. We overlap a little bit. I think the crypto industry is going to have frenemies or competition, whatever we want to call those things. We don't compete with Coinbase, but a little bit here. They have their Coinbase Prime kind of thing, and they have some institutional customers. They obviously have a very tight relationship around stable coins with Circle. But I don't see us entering the exchange market.
Well, speaking of Coinbase, how do you differentiate yourself from Coinbase, which is also positioning itself as a crypto vendor for financial institutions getting into crypto?
Well, but I mean, look, if I took a poll here in this audience and I said, how many people think of Coinbase as a consumer company versus an enterprise company, their DNA where they started is they're a consumer company. And that's, I think, going to dominate how that company evolves. It's not to say they won't serve the enterprise, and that's great. I mean, one of the things, even as I've had the good fortune of being on Bloomberg a handful of times, I always am advocating for like the growth of the industry. This is not a zero-sum game. This industry will continue to expand. And I've said very publicly, I think the Circle IPO, although we are a competitive Circle, I'm so happy that went well. That is great for me. It's great for the industry. And so I root for them. I root for RLUSD a little bit more. But I think that we as an industry have at times been holding ourselves back by that tribalism that just doesn't make a lot of sense. And anyway, I continue to combat that.
So today's news is that Ripple has just raised $500 million in its latest funding round, getting investments from Fortress, Citadel, along with crypto firms like Galaxy Digital and Pantera Capital. You now have a $40 billion valuation. So I guess that means you don't want to or need to IPO?
I mean, need to is, a lot of companies go public because they need to raise capital. Ripple has had a very healthy balance sheet that has enabled us to, buy Hidden Road and buy G Treasury, et cetera. So it has not been a short-term priority for Ripple to get public because we haven't needed to raise capital. We could have raised a lot more than $500 million. We simply didn't feel like we needed to. I am, though, thrilled, and kind of back to one of the things I said earlier, having a Fortress and a Citadel, I mean, these are truly the leading financial players and architects of financial trading in the country. And so for them to come along with us as partners and allies, I think is a very big deal. And I'm thrilled. The corp dev team at Ripple has had a busy year.
What message does that send to Wall Street, to traditional finance, to crypto skeptics?
Get on board.
Boom.
I mean, we talked earlier today about
All
the fact
in.
that there's still over 50% of the financial institutions in the United States have zero exposure to crypto. I mean, there's zero chance that that's going to be true a year from now. That number is going to continue to go down and down. And that is actually great news because that's tailwinds for the whole industry. Yes, I mean that's tailwinds for Coinbase. That's tailwinds for Circle. But that's also tailwinds for Ripple. So happy about that.
All right, let's talk about XRP. How does XRP fit into your larger M&A strategy?
Well, XRP, and I sometimes have to remind the world of this, but XRP is at the heart and soul of what Ripple is doing. We care deeply. We have called it our North Star. But at the end of the day, we want to do things that are good for the XRP ecosystem. We want to build trust in XRP. We want to build utility in XRP. And we want to build liquidity in XRP. And each of the acquisitions we do, in one way or another, we believe it will do those things. Now, it may not be, some people may look at it and be like, I don't really scratch their head a little bit. Well, I promise you that we see in the three-dimensional game of chess, we see how we believe that's going to evolve. Sometimes we'll probably do things that are more obvious and some less obvious. That's okay with us.
Right, there might be...
One of the advantages of being private is I don't always have to explain myself to public investors.
So that's another reason not to have the IPO anytime soon. But there are critics who might say that this pace of M&A, this blistering pace, is papering over the fact that organic adoption of XRP hasn't fully lived up to its potential. How do you respond to that?
Look, I mean, on one hand, I get it, and I would say again, macro. One of the challenges for crypto at large is the number one use case is speculation. I mean, how many proven scaled use cases of crypto on any token or any blockchain can you point to? And unfortunately, I do think the industry has to live up to the promise of blockchain over the next 5 years, 10 years.
Do you think that'll still be the case in 5 years' time?
No. I was in Saudi Arabia last week on a panel at the IIF, and this was my FII. That was my primary point. That we are finally, partly because of regulatory clarity, you're seeing more entrepreneurs, more investors, and it's very analogous to what happened in the earliest days of the internet. The 1996 Telecom Deregulation Act provided clarity and structure so that entrepreneurs and investors could come into the internet space and did the money flow in, and the entrepreneurs flowed in. And yes, we saw a dot-com bubble. I think as we get more regulatory clarity, you're going to see more institutions, more capital, more entrepreneurs. Now, on XRP specifically, look, do I think that we have room to grow? Absolutely. But if you told me 3 years ago, you'd have literally, I think there's 100 different interesting startups going on in different aspects, some even competing with the Coinbase on the consumer side. There's a ton of growth that's going on in the XRP ecosystem. Some of that Ripple has partnered with, some of that we have nothing to do with. And that is because I believe XRP is an extremely efficient blockchain. It's very fast, it's very inexpensive, and it's very scalable. We don't advocate that it's the right one size fits all, that you should do everything on the XRP blockchain. There's other blockchains that are going to be better at different use cases, and that's great. But we think that we'll continue to champion XRP use cases we think are uniquely good on that blockchain.
And it's because of that potential that we see that an ETF issuer said a spot XRP ETF will likely launch next week or shortly thereafter, even with the government currently shut down. We've seen that happen with the Solana spot ETF and the Litecoin spot ETF as well. What does having a spot XRP ETF mean for the coin specifically and for Ripple broadly?
Well, look, I think anytime you are seeing the kind of trust and institutional dynamic of an ETF, making it easier to access and bringing capital into the XRP ecosystem, that's good. It's not lost upon me, ETH as a token was kind of lagging the market in terms of the overall market activity in the spring. And then the ETH ETFs went live and ETH went on a tear. I don't think that's a big surprise. You saw people easier access coming in. I think the first ETH ETF grew to $1 billion very, very quickly. I can't remember the exact timeline. But I think you're going to see that happen in the XRP ecosystem because there's a lot of demand from people who don't have the skill set or interest in launching a Coinbase account or what have you, and they want to have exposure to this asset class. So I think it's overdue. It's frustrating that some of these things have taken so long, but I'm not yet saying it's going to happen next week. I know people on the panels have said it's happening next week. I've heard that said before, so I'm not going to count on it. But it's obviously very, very soon, and I think that's good for the industry.
You talked a little bit earlier about how you want to be at the intersection of traditional finance and decentralized finance. Ripple filed for a national trust charter back in July. Explain how this differs from a full banking license.
Oh, I'm not sure I'm the best person to answer that.
Well, why would you want to do this? Why would you be? Why would you want this national trust charter?
So I was on a panel in Washington, D.C. right after a guy named Brett McIntosh, who's the chief legal officer of Citibank, and who, by the way, is a great guy, former in the Treasury Department executive. One of the things he said is, look, crypto companies should be held to the same regulatory standard as the banks. I am totally at peace with that. I agree. But then he went on to argue that the crypto companies shouldn't have access to the Fed master account. Like, wait a minute. That doesn't make any sense. There are advantages that are good for Ripple, and by the way, good for society. People talk about the risk around let's say, RLUSD or other stablecoins depegging. Well, if we have a Fed master account and we have a deposits at the Fed master account, you actually improve the reliability and stability of stablecoins. That's a good thing. We should want that. So, look, I will admit that we haven't talked that publicly about exactly our thoughts on what a Fed master account and a charter license could mean for us. But suffice it to say, we think it will give us degrees of freedom in our overall strategy to kind of continue to build out the blockchain infrastructure.
I guess it's not surprising then that the banking industry is not exactly thrilled about this. The
bank doesn't want competition because they've done a shitty job of serving their customers.
Boom, boom, boom.
The bank lobby would, is urging the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency to deny applications from crypto firms that are seeking these charters. What would you say to that?
I'd say the same thing. By the way, I mean very seriously. I think Brent McIntosh is a fabulous guy, great chief legal officer, but like you can't have it both ways. Don't ask us to be regulated as a full bank and then not give us the resources that allow us to provide services and reduce risk, et cetera. Like, and look, I truly believe, I've already talked about Coinbase and Circle, competition is good for the market. Competition is good for customers. Why would we be anti-competitive? I would happily be on any panel with any member of the bank lobby or bank executives, and customers deserve choice.
Everyone's protecting their vested interests.
I don't think Ripple's trying to protect our vested interests. We're playing offense and saying we want to grow, we want to build products and services that customers want. Look, I understand, but like once you see an industry go into defense, that's the death of an industry. Like, I think you have to innovate, you have to lead, and I think the banking industry has been on their back heels, and I think that's why crypto now exists. People want an alternative. People want the flexibility. We saw a great panel from the National Cryptocurrency Association with a woman up here talking about the benefit of having 24/7 access to your money. By the way, I'm guessing everybody in here has some story. I certainly do. When I go on, I execute a wire, and it takes me literally 30 minutes just to actually get the wire out. It's nuts.
30 minutes is an improvement from what it was 5 years ago.
So we're on the same page.
The Federal Reserve recently hosted a payments innovation conference that was really focused on crypto. What does that mean for the crypto industry? I mean, how has this shift affected your prospects? And I guess I'm curious what level of engagement you have with regulators on this.
I mean, Ripple leaned in aggressively into the kind of regulatory environment, and part of that we talked about in context of the super PAC Fair Shake that we supported. But it also, even since the appeal by the SEC was dropped, we've met with the crypto task force at the SEC, and I think people understand we have a unique perspective because of the journey we went through, which was long and expensive. We will continue to lean in. Ripple has been a compliance-first company from the earliest days, and arguably, controversially, Ripple took a pro-bank, pro-government point of view at the earliest days of the crypto industry, which wasn't popular amongst a lot of the crypto industry.
Yeah, you're kind of an outlier in that regard.
We are, and we were, and I think people have come around to the point of view that that was the right strategy, and people have kind of moved towards our point of view on that.
You mentioned RLUSD, Ripple stablecoin. It's surpassed $1 billion in market cap and is now a top 5 US dollar stablecoin. In 10 months. In 10 months. But the thing is, there's a lot of stablecoins. That market has grown really quickly, and there are a lot of questions over how many stablecoins can exist and operate safely in the current system. How do you think about this? Is there like a limit in terms of total dollar value or number of issuers?
Look, I don't think the world needs hundreds of US dollar stablecoins. I think there will be a handful of winners. I'm thrilled. I mean, you think about, we went from a standing start 10 months ago to $1 billion market cap. What people don't know is that there was a period of time in the spring of 2023 when we decided to launch our own stablecoin. In our payment flows that Ripple was enabling on an institutional basis, we were minting 20% of all USDC. And you kind of ask yourself, wait a minute, if we're minting that much of USDC, why aren't we a principal in this market? I am, again, as I said, I want Circle to continue to do well. We will focus RLUSD as an institutional, very compliant, most transparent. We're really trying to be the whitest of white hats and kind of tier one, both in how we're regulated, how we manage our capital. And so far, I'm very pleased with that progress.
Are we at saturation point in terms of the number of stablecoins out there?
Oh, no. Well, what's going to happen, I think, is a whole bunch of people are going to launch new stablecoins, and they're going to realize, wait, what am I doing? So I think there'll be a further explosion of US dollar stablecoins. But if you don't have your stablecoin listed and have liquidity around the world on lots of venues and lots of currency pairs, it's not that interesting. So, you can launch one, but it's like, is it useful? And we have an advantage of making it useful because we are in payment flows for lots of institutions.
All right, I'm going to wrap up our conversation here and go back in time to your prior life when you worked at Yahoo.
When I was just a child.
Just a child, 2006, right? You wrote something called the Peanut Butter Manifesto. Have any of you heard of this? Yeah. Okay, all right. So you know that
one of the editors is right there. He works with me at Yahoo.
All right. The gist of it is that to focus on your core business rather than spreading yourself too thin, like peanut butter. What would spreading Ripple too thin look like?
Well, I do think about this. I'll give you two quick thoughts. When I joined Ripple in the spring of 2015, Ripple was thinking about how to use the XRP ledger for multiple different use cases. There was an effort around smart contracts called Codius. There was an effort around identity, and there's an effort around payments. And one of the first things I said is like, okay, we're picking one. And there was it's kind of the peanut butter dynamic. Like, you can't compete in all of these. We have to decide. I mean, we're a bigger company now. We could do more, but at the time, we had fewer than 100 people, and we weren't going to be able to compete in each. Now, I do think about, as we expand and our breadth of services expands, we want to make sure we don't spread ourselves thin. And I think really, even in your question about should we enter the exchange business, that feels like spreading ourselves too thin. Staying focused on the infrastructure, the institutional infrastructure on blockchain, I think is a massive market opportunity. And I think we're nowhere near scratching the surface of like penetration and saturation of that market. So we will stay focused there, and I hopefully avoid a peanut butter problem.
Does the peanut butter manifesto apply to the crypto industry at large also?
No, I mean, look, I think blockchains and crypto, I think, are going to rewire massive parts of financial infrastructure. I think the benefit of companies is to pick your lane, pick where you want to be the best. And that last panel, I think there's some really talented entrepreneurs building amazing businesses focusing on their piece. And the overall industry, there's just so many different use cases where you can improve the efficiency of transactions, make things less expensive, faster by leveraging blockchains. That doesn't feel like a peanut butter problem.
All right, good stuff. Brad Garlinghouse, thank you so much.
Yay!
Thank you.
Guys, that was amazing. I mean, one of the most bullish videos that you can watch, totally. Links down below, everybody. Join us. Start signing up, crypto.com, BTCC, 2000 XRP giveaway at the end. Good competition, right? Appreciate everybody for listening. And I mean, this is what I get the most excited about. Of course, price. Okay. Crypto, right. Sure. Coming down, whatever. Even David, because Ripple swell, you get everybody in the house. People are going in right now. There's some stuff going in right now. I mean, JP Morgan, Watch Your Guru, talking about crypto, the latest stuff. Bitcoin is on sale. Everybody, I'm bullish, and I hope this helped. I want to thank you guys for watching. Like and subscribe. We're bullish on XRP. Let's go pump this video all the way to the moon so everybody's aware. And thanks, Brad. That was awesome. Ripple swell. Maybe next year I could go. I would love to do that. Get to know people, Just the XRP army never fails. Peace.